Welcome everyone back. This is another episode of the Go-to-Market Kickback, the number one go-to-market leadership interview and strategy podcast in the world. We're here with another incredible guest, Mr. Justin Anovick, coming from the product side of the house to educate us on a few different things. You've been a tremendous product leader, from what I understand, across a series of early stage, growth stage, and enterprise software vendors for the last 2 decades, and he made some pretty transformational product advancements inside of these organizations. And we got introduced just a month or so ago, Justin, right? And the interest of doing this and thinking you had an interesting perspective on the market, particularly when it comes to our audience being more go-to-market practitioner led, right? Where product is a very important thing, right? To understand what you're selling, who you're selling it to, how it fits in the marketplace from a job selection, market penetration, messaging, and value proposition standpoint. You're the guy behind and in front of the scenes, making sure stuff works, it's attractive, and it's sellable. So very excited to talk with you. Hear your perspective on this, get into some juicy bits about your methodologies for go-to-market and how product infuses into that. Can I kick it to you? Could you give us a little introduction on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first, I want to start off by saying sales is always wrong. No, just joking. That is kind of mentality of product that sales screwed it up and didn't do exactly as we designed in product. But, my career, I started off in sales, actually moved to pre-sales. That was really the first half of my career, and then moved into product in the last 10, 12 years. It is interesting to, really see the dynamics at play within a business of, here's what we created, here's how you're selling it, and then here's how the users are using it. From a product leader's perspective, getting those in alignment is probably one of the more critical things. But it's certainly been interesting. And I think the appreciation for what it takes for sales to close deals, that last 10% of an opportunity, is probably why I got out of sales and moved into pre-sales. It's complicated, it's arduous, it's stressful, and in many cases, it's lonely. In that last 10%, when you got the yes all the way through the contract closing, my appreciation for all steps is pretty high, I would say.
Yeah, not a lot of product leaders at your level come from a sales background. Can you maybe walk us through your career functionally for a quick moment here? Why did you get into sales in the first place? What drove you? Obviously, you answered that question a little bit, into pre-sales and then eventually into product.
Yeah, so actually, the late 90s, I managed a retail sports medicine store as a first of its kind in Westport, Connecticut. And I created a website while we were slow during the fall and into the winter months using Front Page. I had no experience whatsoever. And we ended up getting funding for that site. And just like a bunch of others, it went bust in the .com boom bust. I mean, in 2000. One of the vendors I worked with was eGain, which was a email management provider at the time. So, when customers had questions, we used it to monitor, maintain, and answer emails. I went to work with them and started in professional services very briefly. And I was getting frustrated that I was closing services deals and the rep would get paid on it. I didn't totally realize that it was a very small, infinitesimally small portion of their comp, but I was getting frustrated for closing 40, 60, $100,000 deals. And I was like, I could do this. So I moved into sales and was in sales for a couple of years. I was pretty successful, really on the, I was strong on the relationship side. Wasn't really good at the internal processes of calling a deal, knowing that you're not getting it done, thinking that you can replace it with another deal and have a wash at the end. And I kept getting in trouble for helping other sales reps with things that I learned in the sales process, because I was a product oriented person. The CEO was like, hey, you know what? Let's move you into pre-sales, because that's where you can help a lot of other folks. And that was really my moment. I went over, worked for Kana, same type of products. I was 7 years at eGain, was at Kana for 7 or 8 years, and really focused on how customers use products like ours. I would do mystery shopping to understand what the organizations did to reply, how long it took, and I would develop this in the sales process and present these mystery shopping reports to say, this is what your service is like. It really got me to spend a lot of time understanding how those organizations use the product. The big moment was Verint acquired Kana, and there's no real product leader for our business at the time after acquisition. I said, I can do that. This is going to be easy. I know exactly what we need to build. I was very customer centric and all that. And then I got in and I was like, oh, there's frameworks and processes. And luckily I had a good mentor who, held my hand and was walking me through how to really make sure that you account for tech debt and all the things that go below the line, if you will, of the exciting things that you can talk about from a product perspective. How do you juggle that with new features and innovation? And ever since, it's really been, I call myself a commercially oriented product leader, focusing on why customers buy and making sure that they adopt. Let's make sure that what we're building is valuable.
Yeah. Take me into your perspective as the product leader. You've been in the boardrooms, at the executive roundtables. You're there, and the sales, the marketing, the go-to-market leaders tend to have loud voices. What is the voice of a product leader in those meetings? Traditionally, how do you differentiate that? You've elevated the power and pedigree of product in a lot of institutions that you've been a part of, right? Just by the nature of knowing that is important and being able to rationalize why. How does that conversation go? How do you make product a priority and make it all make sense in those executive meetings to source back the go-to-market issues to what you guys are actually building or the successes around there?
Early on, I took offense and took things personally when sales would say, we're not selling because of the product or pricing, or marketing's like, I can't talk about all these things because there's no differentiation. And then realize that product truly is the centerpiece of the organization, where we take input from all sources, not just customers, not just partners, not just analysts, but all the internal constituents. And how do you make sure as a product leader that you synthesize that? So it's a lot of listening. It's a lot of appreciating their pains, their agendas, how they're compensated, what they're measured on, to try to put it into this pot, synthesize it, and be able to then make decisions out of those data points. And I think as I progressed, everybody talks about the importance of data. Clearly, you need to understand everything from win-loss to bookings to retention to net retention, and all of those different things, as well as the goals or the OKRs of the organization, of course, and then really make decisions based off of that. For instance, if the organization is struggling with gross retention, what do we need to do in order to improve that? Sales might not be compensated on gross retention and renewals. They're focused on net new bookings. How do we make sure that we communicate and articulate the importance of what we're doing to fix retention, but also make sure that we're articulating the handful of things that we're doing in order to improve innovation or differentiation? It becomes a communication game, I would say. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. Here's what we're getting to next. And be able to synthesize that. People may not get the answer they desire, but at least they are appreciating and understanding what is happening. If the leadership team is strong and there's an understanding of a common goal, fix retention, improve net retention, whatever that is, and there's a common understanding of how we're getting there. The fractured organizations are definitely the ones that sales is doing their own thing, marketing's doing their own thing. How do you help synthesize and communicate the decisions, even if it's not the thing that those organizations really want, but it's the time that we have and the available resources that we have that we're using in order to achieve the common goal?
I'd say the major goals across most large software organizations is increasing in market share, increasing revenue numbers, right? And increasing product adoption across given marketplaces. When you're thinking about building products, right, and your sort of continuous product pipeline, how much of your time is spent building things around like distinct customer demand or demand from your sales and marketing team with feedback they're getting versus actual data points on product usage, right? And different attributes that you just mentioned there versus your just general intuition as a product leader and knowing, like, I look at the trend charts, I look at the macroeconomics. These are the areas I think we're going to be most successful if we continue to build our products or take a risk on this avenue. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I was just talking to a previous UX leader of mine, Ron Severity, and he made a very good point. If we build exactly what the customers ask, we're not going in the right direction. That's where the synthesis comes. Are you just building a faster horse, or are you building the car? I think that all of those inputs are unbelievably critical. Customers need to have input and also feel like they have a say in where things are going. Just like partners, kind of like analysts, they're influencing directionally. Internal constituents need to have that understanding, as well as an understanding of, hey, there's a difference of we need to go and win this deal this quarter because bookings is critical. We have to achieve this. We have to make sure that we expedite a release of this feature that we already have planned to align in this quarter to prevent revenue recognition. That's one thing. That's anecdotal, but that's like in the moment, critical business decision to ensure that we hit our quarter. There's a common theme we are seeing. People want to do more low, no code things without having to involve IT. Well, here's the 27 things, and we've kind of narrowed it down into these 3 core themes that we're going to build. That becomes a critical thing. From a CSM perspective, we don't know what they're using, so we need to implement telemetry and understand what's going on. And so those core key constituents, it varies depending on the goals. Certainly if we're going after gross retention, measurable goals, right? Gross retention, net retention, adoption's a little grayer, even though that's a core thing, but those measurable bookings, those measurable goals become things that we drive. There's a thing called power scoring, which, many folks in the GTM world may not know, but it's a way to identify initiatives that you're doing in product and a value score essentially associated to each one of those. So usually there's like 5 categories. Is it helping revenue? Is it helping retention? Whatever those are. And that kind of generates a score to then use to articulate, hey, this is why we're doing this versus this. And as long as it's transparent, it makes it easy. Those don't always account for everything. So like I've built a business case value framework that incorporates all of the data points as well as the ongoing cost of delivering that feature or that feature set. And it's a critical tool because it shows an objective score value to say, this is why we're doing this versus this. It's clear that this is a higher value to our business, even though anecdotally you might have come across this a couple of times. This is why we're choosing to do this other thing that's a higher score. We may choose not to do that, but the objective view is there for leadership to understand why we're choosing to do one thing over another. Without those objective scores or views or values, it becomes unbelievably anecdotal and almost entirely based off of, no offense to the CEO or CRO, but almost entirely off of the anecdotal meeting that they had 2 days prior with a customer that says, this is the greatest thing ever. How do you get away from those anecdotes? And data plays an important role. Your intuition comes in to say, okay, what if everything is tied? Why are we doing one thing or another? There's a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year view that you need to say, my intuition says this is going to be much more valuable in 5 years. But those data points drive the initial set to make it objective and less emotional driven or anecdotal driven for the leadership team, and to put a common view on it for everybody to make a decision.
Yeah, 100%. Takes the empathetic approach to culminate all of that data, all of those ideas, all of those anecdotes, and you'd probably get more opinions, more heated opinions thrown at you than almost any other job function in an enterprise software company.
Yeah, I mean, being the center of the organization in many ways, because you're taking that input, you're never going to appease everyone, nor are you going to appease anyone in many ways, because you got to make decisions that are only half for this, a quarter for that. But yeah, it's an empathetic approach. Understanding what I tell my product leaders, understand people's agendas, what they're compensated and measured on. Once you start to understand that, you start to understand why people are asking you these questions.
One piece that I get asked a lot, and this will drive us to the next point of the conversation, is salespeople, sales leaders, marketing people, marketing leaders ask me constantly, how do I ensure that my selection of a new company when I'm job seeking is a good one, right? By the viability of that product, the product market fit in its current state, and the future readiness of that product to actually advance and grow inside of a marketplace. For the sellers and sales leaders out there, what sort of tips would you have in their consideration of a new software organization to look and see that this is one, something sellable, this is one, two, something growth worthy, right? And this is three, something that's going to resonate with whatever certain audience that they're already selling to or will prospectively sell into in the future.
Yeah, I would say it's the same top things that I ask. What are the North Star metrics of the business? If retention is a problem, then, the follow-on question is, do I get paid on renewals? And if the answer is no, there's going to be a potential misalignment because you're kind of left out in the cold if the whole goal is to fix retention. The second part is to ask this explicitly: what is the layered cake view of what product delivers? So layered cake is the categories that you're doing development against. There's tech debt, maintenance, there's bug features, bugs, there's features, there's innovation. There's usually 7 to 10 categories that a business measures. If, the alignment of the North Star metric, i.e. you're paid only on bookings, and then the layered cake shows 57% is spent on maintenance, there's going to be frustration because you're not getting the new features, the innovation, you're not getting the new things that make it easier for you to have conversations.
That's interesting. It's something that so many salespeople overlook, right? When they're considering new jobs, they don't ask any product questions. They look at the one pager, they look at the website, they see the couple of logos that they've got on there. They'd be like, that's a good enterprise customer. So it must be a good product, but no one gets into the weeds of it really. Or I think simply because a lot of people don't know the right questions to ask, right? To prove the validity that this market is going to grow, right? And this product is actually fitting with the right customers.
And by the way, if your retention is lower and you're moving people from on-prem to cloud or whatever, but like if you're compensated on the North Star metrics, then it's okay to have that much in maintenance and bug fixes and tech debt because it's aligned with what your goals are. The struggle is when you're paid only on bookings and very little net new product is being delivered. That's a mismatch you'd have to consider.
Yeah, 100%. Well, in your personal professional life, you've also recently launched a podcast, right? Product Peeps. Tell me about it.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's get the word out.
Yeah. So at a very cliche high level, I think that there's not enough positivity going on. I think that in people's roles, especially in the product organization, it's almost entirely focused on the negative, what's going wrong, what's happening, how do we fix it? Very little on celebrating the things that people do well. So I created the podcast to focus on what makes individuals proud. After recording a number of these over the past few months, I am so excited that people talk about the most proud moments are when they're helping other people. There's a humanity element to it that I've been somewhat shocked, but pleasantly surprised and exceptionally happy about. And so it really is generally about what makes you proud and talking positivity and, and celebrating those things.
I love it. It's just not enough of that in general workforce cultures right now, especially in the sales pathway where there's frustration, stress, and independence, which can lead to loneliness. It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, win rates, no matter what anybody says, are going to be between 20 and 30%. By the time a rep gets a deal in SQL, it's 20 to 30%, unless you're in a unique space. Once you get to a certain stage, then obviously win rates are higher. It's literally like baseball. If baseball players just focused on the times that they got out and get frustrated at it, they're going to get out at least 7 out of 10 times. And the same exact stats from a sales rep's perspective. So how do you focus on the things that you did well? Why did you win that deal? How do you make sure to talk about the benefit of the whole organization contributing and all that stuff? But focusing on those wins, focusing on the things that you do well, even if you lost, but the things that you do well in those, marketing is going to convert 1, 2, 3% of the things that they're trying to achieve. And so in essence, if you truly look at it, you're failing almost a high majority of the time. That gets very distressing and it reduces confidence for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's a state of mind thing. I can speak to that for myself in terms of what I'm most proud about in my career and pathway. I think it's probably a cliche and similar to everything that you've heard, but I'm in a luxurious position where I get to talk to people for a living, right? Hear about their lives, hear about their careers, hear about their choices, and have a degree of influence, right? And how they're moving their lives forward. I'll think about it whenever I'm placing someone in a new job, like, do you remember the board game Life? It's like 5 big moments in the board game of life: be born, go to college, get a job, buy a house, die. Changing jobs is one of the 5 big things you do in life. If someone's fortunate and they works hard, they're doing it once every 5 years, maybe a little quicker nowadays, 10 years for some people. It's a key inflection point that totally disrupts your entire ecosystem that you're living in 40, 50, 60 hours a week. The moments where I can truly find someone or put someone in an advantageous position where they've got that career change or that job change or promotion or shifted fields to something that was an honest goal of theirs that's going to drive their life in a different and positive direction. Sometimes it's financially motivated or career driven to progress, or sometimes it's moving deeper down a leadership route, or sometimes it's just working for a good company with good people. And that's what people ask me for most of the time. Is I want to work good, fun, honest people. And it's surprisingly uncommon. The proud moments for me in my career path, consulting in that journey and placing people in those new roles, is when you look back at a year, 2 years later, and someone's just thriving in that, hit the actual goals that they want to, and they come back to me and this was the best decision that I could have made. Get them out of a sticky situation, all sorts of people feels. You get them in a new state of mind that's framed by the new people and the ecosystem that they're working in. It's a feel good moment, when something like that happens. It is something that's what you feel proud about.
I love that. I mean, and I think that, it speaks to, there's so much chatter about, competition, be ruthless, the encouragement of kind of how you get ahead and all that stuff. But I would never change anything about looking out for other people, the humanity element of it, exactly what you talked about. If you go home at night or on a Friday and you're like, I helped somebody's life, change by, getting them another job, putting them in a better position. It is like, there is an element of, hey, that makes me feel good, but it's based off of other people feeling good first and putting them in a different position. So I love that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Where can the people find you, Justin? Where can they subscribe to the podcast? Where can they follow and reach out if so?
Yeah. So YouTube, Spotify, at Proud Product Peeps. I love alliterations and didn't even consider the at Proud Product Peeps podcast. So it's at Proud Product Peeps. You can find it on YouTube or Spotify.
We'll put all the links in the bio here for anyone that's listening. Well, I appreciate it, man. These are some really great thoughts. And I think for the right people listening to this can help them get some different perspective and how they're staying motivated, how they're staying proud and happy about their careers, but also how they're considering things from the lens of an actual product capacity that you've built a whole career on doing. So thank you for sharing those thoughts and thank you for joining us on this episode.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Excellent.